She carried a whole nation on her shoulders. Everyone came to her, with their disputes, their fears, their broken lives. And she carried all of it. She was the only one who could. And in the middle of all that weight, she called herself something that tells you everything about who she really was. Not a queen, not a warrior, a mother. This is the story of Deborah, the woman who carried a whole nation and called herself a mother in Israel. You may have heard of Deborah the way she is usually told, the great leader, the prophetess, the only female judge in the history of Israel, the woman who stood behind an army in a time of war. And all of that is true. But behind the leader was a woman, and almost no one ever tells her story from the inside. What it actually cost her to be the one everyone leaned on, the loneliness of being the only one strong enough to lead, the weight she carried in private that no one ever saw. Today, we are going to tell that story. The human story of the woman behind Israel's only female judge. Because think about what her life actually was. In a dark and frightening time, when her people were oppressed and afraid, one person held them together. One person that everyone came to. One person who carried everyone else's troubles and settled their disputes and gave them courage and bore the weight of a whole nation's fear. And did it, as far as we can tell, without anyone carrying her. She was the strong one, the one everyone leaned on. And the strong one, the one everyone leans on, is often the loneliest and most exhausted person of all. That was Deborah, and this may be one of the most relatable stories in the whole Bible, though we almost never tell it this way. Because so many people know exactly what it is to be the one everyone leans on. The parent the whole family depends on. The friend everyone brings their problems to. The employee who holds the whole team together. The eldest child who became the responsible one. The caregiver carrying a struggling loved one. The one who is always strong, always capable, always there. And who carries, in private, a weight no one else sees. If that is you, then this is your story. Deborah was the strong one, for a whole nation. And her life speaks directly to yours. In this video, we are going to step behind the great public figure and into the human heart of the woman, the weight she carried, the loneliness of her position, the cost of being the one everyone needed, the courage it took, and the tender truth hidden in the name she gave herself, a mother in Israel. We are going to meet the real Deborah and step inside her life. A note before we begin. The Bible tells us the essential things about Deborah, that she was a prophetess and a judge, that people came to her for justice, that she was married, that she rose in a time of war, and that she called herself a mother in Israel. But it tells us almost nothing about her inner life, her home, her private cost, her feelings, her marriage, her childhood, her death. So while the facts of her role are from Scripture, the human interior of her story is a careful, respectful reconstruction of what her life must have held. Where we are imagining, we will say so. This is the woman behind the leader, pictured with care. It begins with the weight, the daily weight of being the one everyone came to. The Bible gives us one small, vivid picture of Deborah's daily life, and it tells us almost everything. It says that she sat beneath a palm tree in the hill country, and that the people of Israel came up to her there for judgment. Day after day, they came, and she carried what they brought. Picture that daily reality. From morning to evening, a line of people coming to her with their disputes, their grievances, their broken relationships, their hardest problems. The ones who had been wronged, the ones who could not resolve their conflicts, the desperate, the angry, the grieving, the confused. All of them came to Deborah, because she was the one with the wisdom, the authority, and the fairness to help them. And one by one, she listened and weighed and judged and carried what each of them laid before her, day after day after day. And think about what that does to a person, to be the one everyone brings their troubles to, because every problem that came to her, she had to take into herself, understand, and carry to a resolution. Every conflict, every grievance, every hard human mess, it all flowed to her, and she had to hold it. That is an enormous emotional weight. Anyone who has ever been the person others come to, the wise friend, the one who solves everyone's problems, the leader everyone leans on, the parent the whole family depends on, knows how heavy it is to carry everyone else's burdens. Deborah carried a whole nation's every day. And notice something the Bible does not say, but that we can feel in the silence. It never mentions who Deborah brought her troubles to. It never mentions anyone judging for her, carrying her, holding her up. She was the one at the top, the one everyone else came to. And that means, almost certainly, that she carried her own burdens alone. Because that is the position of the person at the top, the one everyone leans on. There is often no one above them to lean on in turn. The one who carries everyone is very often carried by no one. And we can imagine that Deborah knew that particular loneliness deeply. And she did this in a dark and frightening time. The Bible tells us her people were oppressed, living under a cruel enemy, afraid. So the troubles that came to her were not small ones only. They were the troubles of a frightened, suffering people. She was holding a nation together in a time of fear. She was the steady center in a frightening world, the one people looked to for hope and courage when everything felt like it was falling apart. That is a weight almost beyond imagining. To be the person a whole frightened people leans on to stay standing. And Deborah bore it. And picture what a single day of that must have been. She would have risen early, and the people would already have been gathering, waiting for her, needing her, before she had even begun. And then the long hours, one person after another, each with a burden, each needing her full attention, her wisdom, her fairness. The bitter disputes between neighbors, the wronged demanding justice, the desperate begging for help, the frightened wanting reassurance. Hour after hour, she gave herself away. A piece of her wisdom, a piece of her strength, a piece of her heart, to each one who came. And when the sun went down and the last of them left, she would have been utterly emptied, poured out, with nothing left, until the next morning, when it all began again. And there is a detail worth pausing on. The palm tree. The Bible remembers the very place, the palm of Deborah, where she sat and the people came. Think of what that palm tree became over the years. It became a fixed point in a frightening world, a place people knew they could go, a place of justice and wisdom and steadiness in a land full of fear. Under that tree sat the one person who would hear you and help you and set things right. Deborah, sitting faithfully in that same place day after day, became a kind of anchor for a whole people, the still point they could always find. And that steadiness, that faithful being there, is itself a form of love that costs the one who gives it more than anyone knows. And there is something about Deborah's position that made her weight heavier still, and her loneliness deeper. Because she was not one leader among many. She was, the Bible tells us, the only female judge in the entire history of Israel. A woman holding the highest authority alone in a world run almost entirely by men. Think about how remarkable and how isolating that must have been. In her time and place, leadership, authority, judgment, these were the domain of men. And yet here was a woman, and the whole nation came to her and recognized her wisdom and submitted to her judgment. That is extraordinary. But it also means she stood alone in a way no one else did. There was no one else like her. No other woman in her position to understand what she carried, no map for what she was doing, no one who shared her particular place. She was, in the deepest sense, the only one. And we can only imagine what it took for her to hold that position with grace. She would have faced doubt, surely. The doubt of those who could not accept a woman's authority. She would have had to be wiser and stronger and more certain than anyone, simply to be allowed to lead. She could not afford to be weak, or to falter, or to show the strain. She had to be the strong one, always, in front of everyone. And that is its own exhausting burden. The burden of never being allowed to be weak, of always having to be the strong one, because everyone is depending on you and watching you and needing you not to break. And here is where her story reaches out and takes hold of so many hearts. Because so many people know exactly this. The weight of being the strong one. The one who holds the family together. The one everyone comes to. The one who cannot fall apart. Because too many people are depending on them. The single parent carrying everything. The eldest child who became the responsible one. The leader who carries the whole team. The caregiver everyone leans on. If you are the strong one in your world, the one who carries everyone and is carried by no one, then Deborah is your sister. She knew that weight. She carried it for a whole nation. And think of what it costs, over time, to be that person. The exhaustion that builds when you are always giving and rarely receiving. The loneliness of being the one others lean on, with no one to lean on yourself. The quiet ache of holding everyone together while wondering who, if anyone, is holding you. These are the hidden costs of being the strong one, and they are real, and they are heavy. And Deborah, the only female judge of Israel, carrying a whole nation under her palm tree, would have known every one of them. Her strength was real, but so, we can be sure, was its cost. And there is a particular loneliness to being the one who is never allowed to not know the answer. Because everyone came to Deborah for wisdom, which meant she always had to have it. There was no one she could go to and say, I don't know what to do. She was the one who was supposed to know. The buck stopped with her. And that is a heavy and lonely place to stand. To be the final answer for everyone, with no final answer of your own to turn to. Every leader, every parent, every person others depend on for the answers knows this weight. The loneliness of being the one who is not allowed to be lost, because everyone else is depending on you to know the way. And consider, too, that she had to carry not only the people's troubles, but their hope. In a frightened, oppressed nation, Deborah was the one who kept hope alive, who reminded a beaten-down people that things could change, that God had not forgotten them, that there was a way forward. To be the carrier of a whole people's hope is perhaps the heaviest burden of all, because hope is fragile, and it had to be protected and fed and kept burning by someone, and that someone was her. When a whole nation's hope rests on your shoulders, you cannot let it fall, even on the days when your own hope feels thin. Deborah carried the flame of a nation's hope and would not let it go out. And now we come to the heart of who Deborah was, the name she gave herself, which unlocks everything. Because in her own song, recorded in the Bible, Deborah did not call herself a queen, or a general, or a judge. She called herself a mother in Israel. Sit with that because it is one of the most beautiful and revealing things in her whole story. A mother in Israel. That is how she understood herself. Not as a ruler over the people, but as a mother to them. And that changes the whole meaning of the weight she carried. Because a mother does not carry her children's burdens as a duty. She carries them out of love. A mother does not lead her family from above. She holds it together from within, with tenderness. When Deborah called herself a mother in Israel, she was telling us that everything she did, all the judging, all the carrying, all the leading, she did as a mother does for her children, out of love, and out of a fierce desire to protect and hold together the people she loved. And think about what a striking image it is for her to reach for. She could have called herself so many things: a ruler, a judge, a prophetess, a deliverer. All of them would have been true, and all of them would have exalted her. But she reached past all of them for the humblest and most tender word of all: mother. Of all the ways she could have described herself at the height of her power and fame, she chose the language not of authority, but of love. That tells you something profound about her heart, that at the very center of who she was, beneath the judge and the leader and the prophetess, was simply a woman who loved her people like a mother, and understood everything she did as an act of that love. And that reframes her whole story into something deeply tender. Picture it, a nation of frightened, struggling people, and one woman holding them all like a mother holds a family, settling their quarrels the way a mother settles the quarrels of her children, comforting their fears the way a mother comforts a frightened child, giving them courage the way a mother gives her children courage, fighting for them, protecting them, refusing to let them fall, the way a mother fights for her children. Deborah mothered a whole nation. She took an entire frightened people to her heart and cared for them as her own. And think about what that tells us about the kind of strength she had. Because there are different kinds of strength. There is the hard strength of domination and force. And there is the deeper strength of a mother, the strength that holds and protects and endures and refuses to give up on the ones it loves, no matter the cost. Deborah's strength was the second kind. It was maternal strength, the fierce, tender, unbreakable strength of a mother. And that is, in many ways, the strongest strength there is. Anyone who has watched a mother fight for her children knows there is no force on earth quite like it. Deborah brought that force to the leadership of a whole nation, and there is such honor in this for every mother, and for everyone who mothers others, whether they have children of their own or not. Because Deborah shows us that mothering is not a small or private thing. It is one of the most powerful forces in the world. The mother who holds her family together is doing, on a small scale, exactly what Deborah did for a nation. The woman who takes others under her wing, who protects and nurtures and refuses to give up on people. She is a mother in Israel too. Deborah lifts up and honors every person whose strength is the fierce, tender, holding strength of a mother. She shows that it can hold up a whole world. And notice how this maternal way of leading is so different from how power usually works. The world's powerful so often lead by fear, by force, by making themselves great at others' expense. But a mother leads by love, by service, by making herself small so her children can grow. She spends herself for those in her care. She puts them first. She measures her success not by her own glory, but by their flourishing. Deborah led like that. She did not use her position to exalt herself. She used it to serve and protect her people. And that is a rare and beautiful kind of leadership. The leadership of a servant, the leadership of a mother, the kind the world needs most and sees least. And think of how her people must have felt about her. Not merely respected, loved. Because you fear a tyrant, but you love a mother. A nation led by a mother in Israel would have felt, beneath all the fear of their times, that they were held, that they were cared for, that someone was fighting for them who truly loved them. There is a security in being mothered that nothing else gives. The deep safety of knowing someone loves you enough to carry you. Deborah gave a frightened nation that security. Under her palm tree, a whole people felt, perhaps for the first time in years, that they were not alone, that they had a mother who would not let them fall. And then came the moment that tested everything. The moment her people needed not just a judge, but a deliverer. Because her nation was under the heel of a cruel oppressor, and the time came to stand and fight for their freedom. And in that moment, it was Deborah who had the courage that no one else did. We will not dwell on the battle itself. That is a story often told. What matters for us is what it revealed about Deborah. Because when the time came to act, the Bible tells us something striking. She summoned the military commander, a man named Barak, and told him it was time to move against the oppressor. And Barak, the soldier, the man, the commander, was afraid. He would not go unless Deborah went with him. He said he would only march if she came too. Let that sink in, because it is extraordinary. The professional soldier would not go into battle without the woman from under the palm tree beside him. Her presence was worth more to him than an army. Her steadiness, her faith, her courage. These were what he needed, more than weapons or numbers. It is one of the clearest pictures in all of Scripture of the strength of this woman, that a battle-hardened commander drew his courage from her, She was the source others drew from. Even the strongest men around her leaned on her strength. That is who Deborah was. The one everyone, even the warriors, leaned on. Think about what that means. The military man was afraid, and it was the woman under the palm tree who had the courage. It was Deborah the commander leaned on for the strength to act. She was the steady one, the brave one, the one whose courage held everyone else up, even the soldiers, even the commander. And she did not refuse. She did not say it was not her place, or that fighting was men's work, or that she had done enough already. She went. She rose from her palm tree and went with them into danger because her people needed her to. Her courage carried the courage of a whole army. And that is the mother in Israel again, isn't it? Because that is exactly what a mother does. When her children are in danger, a mother does not hang back. She does not count the cost. She goes toward the danger, toward whatever threatens the ones she loves, with a courage that surprises everyone, including herself. There is nothing braver on earth than a mother protecting her children. And Deborah, the mother of a nation, showed exactly that courage when her people were threatened. She went because they needed her, because that is what a mother does. And think about the fear she must have had to master to do it. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what must be done in spite of the fear. Deborah was human, going toward a battle, toward danger, toward an armed and cruel enemy. She would have been afraid, as any sane person would be. But she went anyway. She did not let her fear decide for her. She felt it and mastered it, and did what her people needed. That is the truest kind of courage there is. Not fearlessness, but faithfulness in the face of fear. And it is a courage available to every ordinary person who has ever been terrified and done the hard thing anyway, for the sake of someone they love. And notice too the humility woven through her courage. Because when the victory came, the Bible tells us it came in an unexpected way, through the hand of yet another woman. And Deborah did not grasp the glory for herself. In her song, she celebrated the others. She gave the credit widely. She lifted up those who had played their part. The one who had carried everything did not need to be praised for everything. That too is the heart of a mother. To do the hard work, carry the weight, take the risk, and then rejoice to see others honored, without needing the glory for herself. Deborah led like a mother, and she celebrated like one too. But let us step now into the part of her life the Bible never shows us. The private hours, away from the palm tree and the crowds. Because every public figure has a private life, and the woman who carried a nation by day had to carry it home with her too. The Bible tells us she was married. She is called the wife of a man named Lapidoth, and that is all it tells us. But it opens a window. Because it means that Deborah was not only the great public judge, she was also a wife, a woman with a home, an ordinary human life alongside the extraordinary one. And we can imagine the private cost of carrying a whole nation while also being a wife, and running a household, and living an ordinary life. The exhaustion she must have carried home at the end of a long day of bearing everyone's troubles. The weight she could not fully set down, even in her own house. And there is something so relatable in that double life. The public strength and the private ordinariness held together in one person. Because that is how it is for so many who carry others. By day, the capable one, the strong one, the one who has it all together. And then home, to the ordinary tiredness, the private struggles, the same small human needs as everyone else. The world sees only the strong public face and forgets there is an ordinary, tired, human person behind it, who goes home and takes off the strength like a heavy garment and is simply, quietly, a person again. Deborah lived that double life. The mother of a nation was also just a woman, going home at the end of a long day. Picture her in the evening, after the last of the people had gone, after the day's judging was done, the tiredness of it settling over her, the troubles of the day still turning in her mind, the disputes she had settled, the fears she had absorbed, the weight of a frightened nation she could never quite put down. Did she have someone to talk to about it? Did her husband understand what she carried? Was there anyone, anywhere, who held her up the way she held up everyone else? We are not told. But we can imagine that the private hours of the strong one were often heavy and lonely. That she carried, in the quiet, a weight that no one fully saw. And this is the part of the strong one's life that no one ever sees. The public sees the strength, the competence, the steadiness. What they do not see is the private cost, the exhaustion behind closed doors, the tears no one witnesses, the loneliness of being the one who holds everyone. Every strong person, every leader, every caregiver, everyone everyone leans on carries a hidden private weight that the world never sees. Deborah carried hers, and there is something deeply comforting for anyone who carries such a hidden weight in knowing that even the great Deborah, the mother of a nation, carried it too. And think of how easily the world takes the strong ones for granted. Because when someone is always strong, always capable, always there, we stop noticing what it costs them. We assume they are fine. We bring them our burdens and never think to ask about theirs. We lean on them and forget that they too might need someone to lean on. The strong ones are so often the least cared for, precisely because they seem to need it least. Deborah, carrying a nation, was surrounded by people who needed her. But how many ever stopped to ask how she was, to see the weight on her, to offer to carry her for a change? Perhaps very few. That is the quiet tragedy of the strong one's life. To be needed by everyone, and truly seen by almost no one. And yet, and this is important, she kept going. Whatever it cost her, whatever she carried in the lonely hours, she got up the next morning and went back to her palm tree and carried her people again. Day after day, year after year. That is the quiet heroism of the strong one, not that they never grow tired or lonely or heavy, but that they keep going anyway. Keep showing up, keep carrying the people who depend on them, even when no one is carrying them. Deborah did that, for a whole nation, for years. And it is one of the most quietly heroic things a person can do. And where did she find the strength to keep going, day after day, when so little was poured back into her? The Bible gives us a hint because it tells us she was a prophetess, a woman close to God who heard from him, who spoke his words. And perhaps that is the answer. Perhaps the one who carried everyone was herself, carried by God. Perhaps in the private hours, when there was no human being to lean on, she leaned on the God who had called her, and found there the strength she poured out on everyone else. The strong ones need a source, or they run dry. Deborah's source, it seems, was her God, the one who held her, so that she could hold everyone else. So step back now, and look at the whole of her, the woman who carried a nation, the mother in Israel, and see what her life teaches us. Because her story speaks with extraordinary power to everyone who has ever had to be the strong one. The first thing it teaches is that carrying others is one of the most sacred and demanding things a person can do. Deborah spent her life carrying a whole nation, their troubles, their fears, their conflicts, their freedom. And it was holy work, and it was heavy work, and she did it faithfully for years. If you are carrying others right now, a family, a team, a community, a struggling loved one, know that you are doing something sacred and something hard, and that it matters more than you know. Deborah's life honors everyone who carries the weight of others. It is not a small thing. It is one of the greatest things a person can do, and it is work that so often goes unseen and unthanked. The one who carries everyone is rarely celebrated for it. The carrying is simply expected, taken for granted, invisible. But it is not invisible to God, and it should not be invisible to us. So if you are one of the carriers, one of the strong ones who holds a family or a community together, hear this. What you do is seen, and it matters, and it is holy. You are doing, in your own corner of the world, exactly what Deborah did for a nation. And though the world may not honor it, it is one of the truest forms of greatness there is. The second thing it teaches is that the strong one needs care too, because we so often assume the strong ones are fine. That because they carry everyone, they must not need carrying themselves. But Deborah's story quietly reminds us that even the strongest, even the one everyone leans on, carries a hidden weight and knows loneliness and needs support. If there is a strong one in your life, the one who always holds everyone together, remember that they need care too. Ask who is holding them. And if you are the strong one, know that it is not weakness to need support. Even Deborah, the mother of a nation, surely longed for someone to carry her. It is not weakness to need to be carried. It is human. And if you are the strong one, there is a gentle word here for you especially. You do not have to carry it all alone. You do not have to be strong every hour of every day. It is not a failure to be tired, or to grieve, or to need someone to lean on. The strongest people are not the ones who never need help. They are the ones wise enough to find a source that refills them, so they can keep pouring out. Even Deborah, it seems, was carried by God, so that she could carry her people. So find what carries you. Let someone in. Let yourself be held, sometimes, instead of always holding. You will carry others better and longer if you also let yourself be carried. And the third thing it teaches is the beautiful truth hidden in her name for herself, that the strongest force in the world is the fierce, tender, holding strength of a mother. Deborah led a nation not by force, but by love. She carried her people not as subjects, but as children. She found her courage not in ambition, but in the fierce protective love of a mother for her own. And that maternal strength, the strength that holds and protects and endures and refuses to give up, held up a whole nation. It is the strength of every mother, every grandmother, every person who takes others to their heart and carries them. And Deborah shows us that it is strong enough to change history. And there is one last thing worth saying, because it is easy to miss in a world that measures greatness by power and fame. Deborah's greatness was not in conquering or ruling or being celebrated. Her greatness was in carrying, in taking a whole frightened people to her heart and holding them day after day out of love. And that kind of greatness is not reserved for judges and leaders and famous figures. It is available to anyone. The mother holding her family together, the caregiver carrying a loved one, the friend everyone leans on, the quiet person who takes others to their heart and will not let them fall. They are all, in their own way, doing what Deborah did. They are all, in their own way, a mother in Israel. And that is a greatness the world too rarely honors. But that holds the whole world together. She carried a whole nation on her shoulders. Everyone came to her, and she carried all of it. And she did it, in the deepest hours, largely alone. She was the only one who could. And through all of it, she understood herself not as a ruler, but as a mother in Israel, holding a whole people to her heart, carrying them out of love, fighting for them like her own children. That is the woman behind Israel's only female judge, not just a great leader, but a mother of a nation. And now you have met her and stepped inside her life. If this gave you a new way to see Deborah and a new strength for whatever you are carrying, subscribe, because we rebuild the world of the Bible and take you inside it. No lectures, no sermons, just the ancient world, rebuilt, and the human hearts inside it. And if you are the strong one in your world, the one who carries everyone else, tell me in the comments. Let this be the place where the strong ones are seen. I read everyone. Thank you for spending this time with Deborah and me. I'll see you in the next one.